Right now, in hospitals all over the world, critically ill patients are receiving the most common routine intervention on Earth. It's a bag of clear fluid known universally as normal saline. This chart compares human blood to the fluid in that bag. A healthy adult maintains a serum chloride level around 100 millimoles per liter, but that bag of 0.9% saline contains 154 millimoles. It hits the bloodstream with a concentration nearly 50% higher than what the human body is designed to handle. We call it normal because of a century-old medical misunderstanding. Early physicians measured the overall osmotic pressure of the fluid to ensure it wouldn't cause red blood cells to burst. They focused on the sodium, but viewed the chloride half of the salt as passive, boring filler. Modern critical care medicine shows us that the mathematical ratio of sodium to chloride in your blood dictates your blood's pH. When massive negative chloride from the IV floods the system, the body's electrical scales tip out of balance. To compensate, thermodynamics force blood's water molecules to break apart, releasing positive hydrogen ions, the literal definition of acid. The very fluid meant to save the patient's life is actively acidifying their blood. And as that unnatural wave of chloride hits the kidneys, it triggers a panic response, unnecessarily constricting the kidney's own blood supply and risking organ injury. Understanding why this routine treatment can become toxic requires us to look past the label. We need to examine chloride's actual molecular architecture and see its true role as the body's invisible electrical counterweight. Chloride is a monovalent anion, a particle carrying a single negative charge. It attracts a highly dynamic hydration shell, like a tiny jacket of water, giving it a streamlined shape to zip through specialized cell membrane channels. This speed is crucial for your red blood cells. As these cells travel through your body collecting carbon dioxide waste, they convert it into negatively charged bicarbonate. They have to continuously pump that negative waste out into the bloodstream. Doing so drains the cell of its negativity, which would instantly warp its internal proteins and break its ability to hold oxygen. The evolutionary solution to this electrical crisis was mapped out by a Dutch physiologist named Hartog Jacob Hamburger. It's a continuous, rapid-fire exchange, known as the chloride shift. Think of chloride as a biological bouncer at a revolving door. Every single time a negative bicarbonate ion is pushed out of the cell, a negative chloride ion steps inside to take its place. The cell maintains perfect electrical neutrality without wasting any energy. This same exact change currency is used by the kidneys. Deep inside their architecture, they operate as highly advanced sensory organs. A specialized cluster of cells called the macula densa actively tastes the fluid passing by, specifically hunting for chloride. If your blood pressure spikes and filtration speeds up, the early kidney doesn't have time to reabsorb the salt. A massive wave of chloride rushes past the macula densa. Those cells taste the influx, realize the flow is dangerously high, and release a chemical distress signal that physically squeezes the incoming blood vessels shut. Chloride is an active, essential gear in the machine. It protects the oxygen delivery system in your blood and acts as the physical trigger pulling the brake lever on your renal blood pressure. This highly tuned system introduces a massive vulnerability when chloride is depleted. If a patient experiences severe, prolonged vomiting, they lose large volumes of gastric fluid. That fluid is primarily hydrochloric acid, meaning they are rapidly draining their body of both hydrogen and chloride. Stripped of that acid, the patient's blood pH shoots dangerously high into a state called metabolic alkalosis. The kidneys recognize this emergency immediately. They attempt to fix the high pH by grabbing the excess basic bicarbonate molecules in the blood and pushing them out into the urine. There is a physical constraint. The molecular doors in the kidney that excrete bicarbonate are called pendrin exchangers. They operate like a vending machine that requires exact change. They will only push a basic molecule out into the urine if they can pull a negative chloride ion back in. Because the patient just threw up all their chloride, the kidney is entirely out of coins. The exchange mechanism physically locks down. The kidney is capable of fixing the dangerous blood pH, but it is paralyzed by the lack of chloride, leaving the patient trapped in a stubborn state of alkalosis. The loss of this single invisible counterion is enough to completely paralyze the human body's internal acid-base resolution system. To fix the pH, a doctor has to step in and replenish the chloride. Because chloride commands so much power over our internal organs, physicians rely heavily on automated hospital labs. They need extremely precise measurements of the patient's blood to make life-or-death treatment decisions. These machines calculate those numbers using ion-selective electrodes. Inside the analyzer is a specialized plastic membrane meant to only allow chloride ions to bind to it and generate a tiny electrical spark. But the membrane has a blind spot. Chloride belongs to a family of chemical elements called halogens, and the machine cannot perfectly tell them apart. In fact, the sensor loves a different halogen, bromide, binding to it with an affinity up to 5 times greater than chloride. This creates a terrifying diagnostic trap. If a stable patient comes into the hospital after taking a common over-the-counter sleep aid that contains bromide, the sensor reads that trace amount of bromide and violently amplifies the signal. The machine confidently reports to the doctor that the patient has a lethal spike of chloride in their blood. This massive fake number breaks the medical math used to evaluate the patient. When doctors plug that hallucinated chloride value into their standard anion gap equation, the formula spits out a physically impossible negative number. Under the laws of physics, a negative anion gap cannot exist in a human being. Without a deep understanding of physical chemistry, our most advanced diagnostic technology will confidently lie to us. It will turn a simple sleeping pill into a false medical emergency. To navigate these chemical landmines, medical culture is finally shifting. Intensive care physicians are increasingly abandoning standard normal saline for large volume fluid resuscitations. They're switching to balanced crystalloids, fluids engineered with lower, safer chloride levels to protect the patient's kidneys from pressure damage. And in the laboratory, pathologists enforce a strict rule: never interpret a chloride result in isolation. If a patient's blood work shows a negative anion gap, that is the ultimate red flag. You stop, you ignore the machine, and you call the floor to investigate the patient's medications. Stepping back, these vulnerabilities make sense when you look at our evolutionary history. Our biological chloride sensors were designed over millions of years for a terrestrial environment where salt was incredibly rare. The human body is built to fiercely hold on to it at almost all costs. We are now living with highly sensitive, ancient protective sensors, but we are drowning them in a daily ocean of hidden, ultra-processed dietary salt and highly concentrated IV fluids. We are forcing a scarcity-driven architecture to process an overwhelming modern surplus. Chloride is the invisible tension cable holding the biological skyscraper together. Respecting its profound electrical power allows us to navigate modern medicine and witness the true brilliance of human architecture.